you start to see how bathroom design takes shape, and the need to try and cater to these different global cultures all coming together into the same space and all wanting the same primitive needs, but wanting them delivered very different.
It's been deemed by UNESCO as the world's largest open air art festival. Ma Durga is celebrated. There are pandals, like temporary temple structures that houses her during the season of the festival, and it's the entire city.
It's really interesting because what you would deem as unacceptable can, in many parts of the world, be deemed as perfectly acceptable.
The deliberation is the publicly owned public places versus privately owned. If there's a public space that is publicly owned, there just might be too many needs to be catered to.
How do you make this very public concern private, and this very private concern public?
We have an overly aging populace with different kind of needs, and we still have public spaces built for the hustle.
Hello, we are live. Welcome, Olympia. Lovely to see you.
So good to see you, Matt. Welcome back to
Welcome back.
our podcast. You are listening to Chronicles of the Galaxy. You're not listening to Chronicles of the Galaxy, are you? You're listening to the podcast. I forgot our show's name. It's been a while.
Chronicles of the Galaxy is correct. You don't even recognize the name now. It has been a while.
Yes, we were on an extended summer break. So how's the weather in Dubai? Is it better now? Is it less so like summer?
It's starting to look a little bit like, yeah. I mean, we've got blue skies now, which is wonderful. That steely grey heat has started to evaporate, and now, yeah, the sun is almost out properly, and you can almost step into the outdoors and almost enjoy it, which is great. How about on your end?
That was a lot of almost in there.
We're so close. We're in that point where everyone gets excited and thinks, yes, we can do stuff. Let's have a party outside. Let's do dinner outside. And then you're like, oh no. Oh no. Not yet. A few more weeks yet.
I've just been all over the place, just doing my scene. It's been a week. I don't know how relevant it is to our conversation. This week we spent about 3 days without power. No power. Yeah. And it was like an episode of Lost and Stranded, where you're up a building, you've got no light, no power. You can't even wade down because it's like waist high water, and it's waterlogged for 3 days. Yeah. It was scary. It happened overnight. It rained. So I'm in Kolkata, in the condo complex that my parents are at. And it rained Monday night. Like Monday night, we saw it starting to rain around 11 o'clock. And then by Tuesday morning, the power goes out around 4 a.m. and that's it. The power doesn't come back for 3 days.
And this is expected? This is standard kind of monsoon stuff? Or this is just...
No, not at all. So they said that it rained about 250 like ml or something, like basically 3 months worth of rain in a single 5 hour window.
It's biblical. Yeah.
Yes, it's that you know, did you are you referring to the rapture thing that just happened, or that we passed this weekend as well?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. No, but it's unexpected. It was monsoon season, and it's like the tail end, so there was supposed to be like a few fight backs, but it's never been this extreme. Like half of the city, more than half of the city was just waterlogged. I think there are still parts of the city that are still dealing with getting rid of the water, getting the power back.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds like that storm Dubai had last year. I
Exactly.
think it was similar. You know, it was like, I mean, obviously it never rains here, but yeah, I mean, the city was broken. It took a long time to get things back, and yeah, it's terrifying. And like I keep saying, I know I've gone on about it 1,000 times on the pod and elsewhere, but global warming does not effectively represent this, but I'm sure it is an outcome of the same.
Yeah,
Weather
it's climate
madness.
change. Exactly. And it's extreme weather events. The same thing happened in Toronto when I was there. We were without power. We weren't waterlogged, so that's the thing. But we were without power for like a day and a half, and then it happened in a sudden burst of rain. So erratic weather patterns is certainly it's a sign of the end times, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a metaphor. Ultimately, in the face of Mother Nature, we are powerless, and she just keeps reminding us. So, how did you
She's
get on
like,
with no power? No Wi-Fi, no nothing. What have you been doing?
um,
Playing Ludo?
yes. Yeah, well, a lot of Ludo, a lot of Uno. A lot
Okay,
of
all
reading.
these
I
years,
actually,
who knows?
other than the part that it was like sweltering hot and just like pitch dark,
So no
for like
AC,
more than two,
no
yeah,
fans. What are you
no
just doing? A
fans.
hand fan?
Yes, we had the hand fans. So it's
God,
called, yeah. That was fun. But
just
I
taking turns on wafting the door.
God no. Oh yes, I did that. But on like they say that if you fan yourself, you're just exerting more power, so you get more hotter,
Yeah, I
just
always say this to my
progressively.
wife. My wife, whenever she gets hot, she starts to do this, and I always say to her, "I'm certain you're just making yourself hotter."
Yes. So if you do it extensively and like to like there's a ratio. You have to it has to be like the sway of an elephant's ear.
The sway of an elephant's ear. That's a lovely Asian turn of phrase. The sway of an elephant's ear. That sounds a bit like, the sort of the butterfly flaps on Japan, and yeah, maybe that's what happened. An elephant swayed his ear
Mhm,
and the heavens
mhm.
opened and flooded your basement.
Sure. And no, oh no, it's also so the reason why I'm here. I mean, not that I need a reason, but the exciting part about it, which is what I was sad about, but I'm happy about again, is that it's Durga Puja season. We
Yeah, tell me about
are
that. I don't know anything about this. Please, please.
what? No, okay, okay. So it's essentially a festival that celebrates Ma Durga, the goddess Durga. And I mean, I don't want to go into too much because we've got great stuff to talk about today.
True, true.
This is basically Okal Bodhon. So she is being called upon by Lord Ram to come in and help fight against this demon god, Sur god called Mahishasur. So this is not the time of the year for her to come down to it. She lives in the where the gods live, and
Does
so
she?
she's yeah. So the fight's been going on, and this god had asked for like some kind of a blessing that said no human can kill him, no man can kill him, like so he's invincible, and so he just goes on like, killing everybody, rampaging and all of that. So the Lord's like, okay, we have to do something. And so there Ma Durga, she's like, she's the warrior. They're like, okay, well, we're gonna give all our weapons to her. So she's the goddess with the 10 hands. And so Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, everybody, Lord Brahma, all of them give them her weapons, and throughout, so these are the days that she's fighting with Mahishasur, and then on the eighth day she defeats him. And so it's the celebration of like the victory of good over evil, which it's the general theme of almost all festivals, but it's the courage that of Ma Durga in the face of somebody who just thought he was invincible.
And it's woman meets beats man, yeah? That's a lovely vibe as
I
well.
mean, you could look at it that way. I think it's courage beats fear.
Okay,
Is
nice.
it's a broader encapsulating thing. And she's worshipped in like all her forms. So there are forms of her where she's a daughter coming back home because she got married and she went off to live with the gods. She's a mother coming to visit her family. She basically brings her entire family with her to visit like Lord Ganesha, Parvati, no, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Kartik. So it's a homecoming of lot. Like if there's a Bengali around you somewhere who has any kind of connection to Kolkata, this is where they want to be. So
Nice.
everybody wants to come back. Everybody. It used to be like a 4-day event, and because I was raised away from it, I didn't. This is only my third Durga Puja, so the excitement is fresh, but it's also something that I've learned to stretch out for like the 10 days. So it starts from Mahalaya, the day the fight begins, and all of that. It's also I mean, just to bring it back to our entirely intriguing conversation that we're about to have today. It's actually been deemed by UNESCO as the world's largest open air art festival, unlike
Okay,
anything of its
interesting.
kind. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
what
great.
happens is, so Ma Durga is celebrated, all like the entire city celebrates her, and anybody who can celebrates her. So there are pandals, like temporary temple structures that houses her and her family during the season of the festival, and it's the entire city. So you look left, right. There's a street there. There's a village there. Everybody, our condo has it. The major like townsmanships, municipalities, everybody. So it's and everybody goes all out with their pandals.
That's
The
interesting.
pandals have like themes. They have like some a lot of people work on sustainability. A lot of people work on social issues, but there are also like the traditional ones that are just about worshiping the goddess. And so the creativity for a month and a half, they start doing this mid-August when there's like a special ritual done. I'm sorry to go on about this. This is the
No, no,
last thing
it's
I'll
very
say.
cool. It's really interesting as well. And I mean, is there any the fact that this downpour happened? What are we in the middle of it now, or is it just finishing up? Or
The festival. It's just
yeah.
we're smack in the middle of it. So this is we're getting into the main chunk of it.
Well, did the downfall kind of wash away some of the
Yeah.
celebration, or is it?
Yeah, so
It's a shame.
so like I said, like people like me who've never experienced, then I guess people, local people as well, it was initially like a 4 day festival, so it's 4 to 5 day festival, so it starts today and then it goes on until Dashami, where she's done and she's leaving. And so we've now stretched out until like the first and the second day, so like the whole 10 days, like it's part of Navratri. So we had a lot of the different ones had to have like special themes, like space future or like revolutionary wars and whatnot. They have their pandals open from day one. So a lot of their decorations, a lot of their work just went under the water. It was just submerged, like the half the city was submerged. These idols are made in this village called Kumartuli. It's the artist's village where the gods and goddesses are created, and they're all made out of clay, like clay and straw. And so water and clay, that's not gonna work. So it felt like it was like a test. Like that's the way my mom said. My mom was like, okay, oh my God, what's happened? And then in the darkness, she's like, you know what? This is a test. We're all like my entire family's here. We're all sitting in the dark in one
You
room
just
and we're
have to
chatting.
overcome. Yeah,
Yeah, she's like, this is
this is
God just
about
checking
testing your
how
spirit.
badly you want to celebrate this.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have the spirit? Yeah. So we're like, yeah. So it was bleak 2 3 days ago, but the water cleared. The power came back on. We had clean water, and then the city just got back into it. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear it today and right now, but there are basically dhak or the drums. So they were initially drums of war, but they're now drums of celebration. So it's just you should be able to hear it all around. The chants made being happening. Oh my, it's amazing. Matt, you need to be here. This is something you have to. I can't words not do it justice. I can't talk about it enough, and still convey an inch of what this place is,
Well, it sounds
especially
great,
during
and
the.
your passion, your excitement for it is really coming through the screen. So,
I'm
no, it's great.
sorry.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. I mean, I don't think I mean, I've luckily been in Asia for cultural celebrations in the past, but I don't think I've ever been in India for anything other than when cricket's been won. Those sort of more contemporary celebrations. But yeah, sounds awesome. One thing that
Okay.
really caught my imagination was we were talking about when the goddess got married. She left home and moved to live with the gods, and I'm just trying to imagine what do you pack then? Like you just you just be like, do I take a coat, or would it be warm? Would it be cold?
It is the Himalayas.
Oh, it's going to be
So
cold. Take that coat.
yeah,
Take a couple of
yep.
coats, love.
Hmm.
Sounds lovely. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I'm glad you finally have power and you have overcome the test. So, congrats.
Okay, but okay, the reason why this was quite relevant to our topic today is because all of these festivals, they happen on the street, and which
In the
is which
public
is a
realm.
shared. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And
So
they're deeply cultural. They're deeply cultural. And I think one thing I've discovered from some of the research around this and some of my thinking around this is that the public realm is very much defined by local culture. So yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, I'm starting to eke into the topic of
no, no,
Middle
take
East
us into
again.
Matt. That was perfect. Take us into it, please, because we've come about it in two different ways, and we've talked about it multiple times. But no, get us started. Tell us what we're talking about today, and where exactly do you think is this individual and public line that is just there? It's invisible, but it's there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it's falling out of summer season, and I know I was traveling a little bit around Europe. You were also traveling more locally. One of the key things you bump up against throughout that is public space design. and specifically things like public toilets, public bathrooms, public services. And, we all get caught out and about in cities wherever we are in the world. And it is sometimes frustrating, but always fascinating to see how these things are set up. So we wanted to have a bit of a conversation about that and just talk about, how public spaces are set up. What do they say about the space they're in? What do they say about the people they serve? How effectively do they serve those people? And yeah, just sort of dive into it really. Does that sort of capture it for you? Anything to add?
That was perfect, Matt. I couldn't have said it any better. It started with the public toilets for me, definitely. And I'm curious if you don't mind indulging me, because I know you've traveled a lot around, before the kids came along. When you were traveling, especially like as a solo traveler, were you ever concerned about the toilet situations or the washroom situations at any given point? I want to know. This is a genuine question.
Well, I was brought up in the UK where you do need to be somewhat concerned about the public toilet situation. But I've now become very much a UAE resident, a Dubai softie. And it's very easy to get lulled into a sense of security here where all public toilets are just perfect. And of course, my kids have been brought up here, so they believe that, any toilet is just as comfortable and easy to access and desirable as one in the UAE. But of course, the world is a different place. So, yeah, I'm certainly aware of the fact that not all toilets are shaped the same, both metaphorically and physically. But yeah, I have to be very clear about reminding my kids that's not necessarily the case, and you can't just sit on a train in Eastern Europe and say, "Oh, I'm going to pop to the bathroom," because you never quite know what's going to be waiting for you.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, that is so true. I think and I think the Gulf softy thing, I don't think it's a softy thing at all. I think it's just standards of cleanliness and hygiene. That's just what it is. Having grown up in the Middle East, I have never had to worry about the washroom situation until I started traveling outside. My first jaunt into the States, when I was studying, I was horrified to see the gap at the Houston airport washrooms, and the fact that you don't have a bidet, it was the worst. It was my worst summer, that summer semester abroad. So I don't understand how are there such differing levels on understanding of standards of like cleanliness standards or hygiene standards. Why is it okay if poop or pee goes on your hand and you need to wash it off with soap, but your butt's okay with a tissue paper? What is that?
It's deeply cultural, isn't it? It's whatever you've grown up used to, and I think in many countries they've just got a deeper, longer history of like substandard sanitation, going back to times when substandard sanitation was the norm. And I guess it's just, I remember when we lived in Cyprus when I was a teenager, and we'd go to random restaurants up in the mountains on the sort of Turkish side, and again I'd be like, I'd finish my starter and be waiting for the main. I'm just going to pop to the bathroom. My dad would give me this look to say, "Are you sure about that?" And yeah, sure enough, you'd come across a kind of a sort of long drop toilet with no sink and whatever, and a curtain that didn't really stretch across. And you're like, okay, maybe I'll wait till we get home. And yeah, it's really interesting because what you would deem as unacceptable can, in many parts of the world, be deemed as perfectly acceptable. And then meanwhile, of course, you have those cultures that are kind of almost pushing the limits forwards and embracing innovation. The classic kind of Japanese toilet, which is all about innovation and all about improved comfort. I think it's really interesting. And then that's at the one end of the spectrum, and then at the other you get some very raw experiences, quite literally.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, man, because I do think there is, like you mentioned right at the start, culture plays a huge role in this. I think the fact that there are so many cultural rituals and social rituals and religious rituals within these Asian societies, that it's a requirement to wash and clean, and just the overemphasis on water and cleanliness, and that just sets the standard. And maybe because a lot of the Western world doesn't have those many social and cultural aspects and rituals to adhere to, or even to aspire to. I think that's where that gap probably comes in. I think you're absolutely right about that.
For sure, for sure. And look, I think it's fascinating as well because I've worked in many airports around the world, and you start to see how bathroom design takes shape and the need to try and cater to these different global cultures all coming together into the same space and all wanting the same primitive needs, but wanting them delivered in a way that could be very different. And it made me really think as I was prepping for the pod and also thinking back through my experience, like how do you make this very public concern private, and how do you make this very private concern public? And is it possible to customize? Is it possible to personalize? And is that what the Japanese are aiming for? Although that does feel like a very singular, quite niche definition of the future of toilet design. But are there ways these things can be repurposed to deliver a more customized, more flexible experience for customers? Because ultimately, in a place like an airport, and the airports certainly that I've worked in, where you're talking Abu Dhabi, Dubai, the heart of the world, a global crossroads, no one customer will have the same needs, but they're all being farmed into the same space. And maybe the issue is expectation. Maybe we all need to just loosen up. But as you say, if you're always accustomed to a bidet, I can imagine your face and coming out and turning to a friend or family member and going, "There's no bidet," and just a classic kind of UAE type response. I mean,
But
obviously, the shataf is an amazing invention, and I know you get travel shatafs. And for those that don't know about shatafs, this is the little, what's often called the bum gun, that you find in this part of the world, certainly. And I know that, as I say, there are travel versions that you could pack and take with you. But are you going to be pulling that out your bag in an airport? Are you even able to take that on through an airport experience without having it taken off you? But it's only right in the right hands. Literally, if you put a shataf in the wrong hands, you can wander into a cubicle and it feels like the person before you's been conducting some kind of very successful rain dance, and suddenly you're just mopping up basically before you even get close to the toilet itself. Anyway, I digress.
no, it was all perfectly taking us into. I think you touched upon it there. It's purpose built environments, right? It's purpose built spaces and purpose built centers that are designed to meet the needs and expectations of the vastly diverse public people they're being designed for. I mean, airports are a great example, but even our general public spaces. I mean, and within an airport, there's set defined customer base that you're targeting. There are the long haul, there's the short haul, there's pleasure travelers, there's business travelers. The segmentation I can see, but how exactly do you go about, like, what does a government have to do? What does a city have to do when they're planning for entire cities and public spaces? How are you designing for that then? Um,
Yeah, and
what
there's the intended customer, and then there's the actual customer, and those there can be quite a significant gap between that. Case in point, in UAE malls now, you go to the bathroom, it's no longer used by customers of the mall. It's largely used by delivery staff who are still customers of the mall. They're the ones doing the shopping in the stores because they're representing some kind of delivery service where someone's ordered a shop to be delivered to their home. They're also collecting food on behalf of customers to deliver, whether it's Deliveroo or Uber Eats or whatever, back to people's homes again. So they are technically customers, but were they factored into the design of that mall? Was that level of volume of customer factored in? Were their needs factored in? The fact that actually, they're dressed differently. They're literally, on the move. They're like in a serious rush, and there's a huge number of them. So, and these guys are pretty good. They normally show a fair bit of respect for the space, but it's a different style of customer, and it's a different volume of customer. And again, capacity is a huge consideration. And they're all guys currently, so that means it's very much weighted towards the men's bathrooms. But so it really changes the experience from a male customer in malls. And like I say, they've every right to be there. They are customers, but they certainly wouldn't have been factored into that design.
I love that. Interesting that because as you were speaking, I realized that given that the gig economy workers are mostly male, the women's washrooms have a lot of the the employees of the shops in there.
Sure.
Um,
Yes, yes.
Most of the sales women and counter ladies and almost any sales rep is it's skewed women, and I never really noticed that. I mean, just I mean now that it's obviously there. So are they then, because they're employees of the brand and they're working at the mall, but then are they still customers? And should there have been malls, should the mall have considered designing a space just for the employees who work at the mall? Was that on the brands they're working for, or was that on the mall development?
Yeah, this is it because again, we all know how limited these small spaces are. A lot of these stores will have a stock room, but they probably won't have a lunch room, and they certainly won't have bathrooms for the staff. So you're right. I mean, there's a whole customer in there that just isn't catered to, and it impacts, not to sound too precious, but it impacts on the shopper customer as well, because again, suddenly you feel like you're in a kind of a functional kind of sort of trade space, a retail team
Mm-hmm.
space, rather than
Mm-hmm.
your own space. And again, these are things that probably have not been considered. One thing I think really interesting, and just sort of broadening the topic, is this isn't just about toilet design. This is about public space design in general. And I do think you get lovely kind of windows into the world and windows into the place that you are and a sense of place from public design. And some of that is through the bathrooms. I think in my research, I recognise that most rest stops in New Zealand have no toilet seat, because there's just a level of mistrust in the public world, and people steal the seat, so we have to give no seat, which is a great shame, and is literally a race to the bottom. And I'm very surprised to hear of that in New Zealand, but apparently it's the case. I was in Denmark this summer, and one thing I thought was particularly charming about public space design, we were staying on the coast up on the beach, and along the beach there were these beautiful old sort of, I couldn't tell you which wood, but beautiful wooden posts, slightly different heights, and it was almost like an art installation along the coast. And I thought at the time I nearly took a photo of it because it was early in the morning, and they were just sort of running along in this sort of beautiful linear fashion. And then over the course of the day, I noticed that people started to use these posts. And actually, what they're intended for is for you to park up your bicycle, because obviously you're Danish, you've cycled to the beach. You can prop your bicycle up to it. You don't have to secure it in any way, because it's a lovely, friendly, and safe space. And then you can remove your clothes and hang them on the top of the post. And it allows them to stay dry and sand free, and you can enjoy your time at the beach. I won't dwell on how people undress and the degree to which they undress, and the freedom and ease of which they strip. Uh, that's terrifying. And again, a window into the world of the Danish. But it was a lovely thought. And then over the course of the day, you see this beautiful display of people's bikes and clothes, and then they wander back up when they're ready, and head back into town. It's these kind of little glimpses that are really valuable and really interesting. Not just in the fact that they're there, how they're used, the fact that people aren't locking their bikes, etc. It's all just a beautiful story, narrative into the psyche and culture of that local place.
Yeah, that's lovely, Matt. I mean, not the scary level degrees of undress that the Danish can get to. That does sound terrifying, but it reminded me of the now non-existent La Mer beachfront out by the Jumeirah area.
Yeah,
I
the
remember.
one in Dubai. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I loved spending my time there, and that this part, this little bit that you just mentioned, was my favorite bit, because they had these paid cubicle like change and washrooms, and so you could pay something, and then you have that entire thing for yourself for whatever duration of the usage it is. You're done, you move out, and somebody else can use it. But that did not mean that if you didn't want to pay, you were excluded. But they've still got these large like tub public areas with like separate shower areas, and generous enough for there, and stretched across the beachfront, so that you're not crowded, and you can just wash your feet, you can wash your hands, if you're comfortable, take a shower, because you're swimming in the beach, you could, and all ages and all shapes and all people would go there. Some would come take their little cubicles, and some would take their little tubs, but it was inclusive in its design. And I'm very sorry sorry to have seen it go, because now it's all private, and it's definitely kept me out of that space.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you talked there about obviously there's an unpaid option, but there is a paid option, and that's where that personalized proposition can really come to life. If you can just if you can kit out a space that has every option for every customer and commercialize it, then it works for everybody. The customer's getting exactly what they want. They're paying in return for a small fee, and you're suddenly making revenue on something. You could bring brands into it. You could make it sponsored. I mean, the number of really incredible. I remember when my kids were little, change rooms that you might find around the world that might be sponsored by a nappy brand or whatever, and it was just so good to get to a space that was hygienic, healthy, because when they've got those pull down sort of beds, I guess it's like a little pull down table that you sit your baby on, and that's clean and it's padded, and there's a nappy there. I mean, that's just a godsend, particularly to a dad who's always inevitably going out without spare nappies and getting caught out time and time again. But in the wrong hand, those pull down tables can be like somewhere that, I don't know, they've been used for all sorts, and you're never going to lay. You wouldn't even put your coat on it, let alone your child. So these things are absolutely critical. And again, as I say, there's a commercial opportunity there. What I think is interesting as well is in certain scenarios, the facility itself is the facility itself. It's kind of standardized, but in an effort to kind of elevate the experience, there are destinations, brands, businesses that are trying to really kind of encourage people to respect and behave better in those places. I noticed when I was in Heathrow this summer, they now pipe classical music into the bathrooms. And it does set a different tone. I mean, I'm somebody who enjoys classical music, and I'm also trying to be respectful in public space. But I noticed that it did feel different. People seem to slow down. They seem to kind of, I don't know, just become a little bit more reflective, even though they literally come from, Heathrow in summer is mental. But then you pop into this little bubble and it does feel different. I'd be really interested to understand if they have stats, and I'm sure they do. They're doing it for a reason, around the behavior. Do people slow down? Are they calmer? Do they clean up better? Are they more respectful? Do they take more care? And if that's the case, then maybe we should be piping classical music through the entirety of airports. Maybe entire cities. This could be an incredible way. I mean, I find particularly if I listen to classical music whilst driving a car, not to go off on a tangent, I am naturally calmer at the wheel. And as you know, in the UAE, driving can be pretty stressful. So it makes a big difference to my well-being. And yeah, maybe cities would be better places if we just had Chopin sort of cascading through the neighborhoods. What are your thoughts?
That sounds lovely. It does sound. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've gone to one of those like fancy hotels, and where they're playing like the very soothing music in the washrooms, and
Yes.
it does make it feel like an elevated experience. So you want to take the time to kind of dry off clearly. You don't want to drip water over the sink as you wash your hands. So there's certainly an impact there. And I'm curious. I think it brings me to the deliberation that I've been trying to decide where it is. It's the publicly owned public places versus privately owned public spaces. Heathrow is owned by Heathrow,
Yeah.
and they are unilaterally in control. But if there's a public space that is publicly owned or governmentally owned, I think that's when there are multiple voices, and there just might be too many needs to be catered to for there to be set definition. And
Sorry, I was just going to say, and there's no commercial agenda there, so they're not really thinking about the bigger picture. They're just seeing it as a service to serve. But if they were thinking more broadly, more commercially, it may, and I wonder if this is an issue with government and public space design in general, is that lack of commercial agenda, that lack of really thinking through the broader opportunities, and you're just trying to sort of cheaply deliver a product, and it's about cost cutting and cost efficiency versus product and experience kind of optimization and commercial optimization. But these are not commercial entities. So this is, I guess, where that kind of race to the bottom, literally premise really probably it kind of is born out of. I don't know how you feel about that.
It's, I think you've nailed it. I mean, you're saying commercialization opportunities, but it is the commercialization opportunities exist because it's an optimized experience, and I think that's where the disconnect is. Not to go back to the toilets again, but when I was working in Qatar and living in Qatar, I went to CMU, so the buildings where I think it was Jean, like basically just big names. I'm sad to say that I've forgotten the names, but it was
Big
beautiful.
John, Big John.
No, okay, so I was obsessed with these people.
We're talking about the
No,
John.
they had a funny name. Okay, it was the same name twice, like Jean Jean or Lemarc, something like
Sure.
that. The point I'm trying to make is when I started working at a ministry office, it was what, a 20-story building, and there were no women's washrooms. Each of the floors, yes, so well, like it's like you said, it's designed for the people who are there. And so at the ministry, up until then, when the building existed, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, from whenever I started working, only men worked there, so there were no women's washrooms. So they had to redo certain floors. Like, I remember every fourth floor was a women's washroom. Like, you could for women who were working there, when I was working there, we would climb down, up or down 4 floors just to get to the washroom, because those were spaces initially not designed for women. But then I've also worked at the Qatar Science and Technology Park, which that space was so beautiful. It didn't just have designated women's and men's, obviously, which was it was commonplace for women to be in the workplace then. It had the best thing that I think urban design within the Middle East has to offer. It's the prayer rooms, and I know it's just for the Islamic people to come in and do their prayers, but it wasn't the case in Qatar. It's just the space was for women to come in and pray, as women to come in and just clean themselves up, women to come in and sit. And eventually the university, the education city prayer spaces became multi-faith spaces almost, because of the people who were using it. The all the women, all the students, like the girls, we'd go into, whether it's at Georgetown or CMU or Texas, because it was a large campus. It didn't matter which prayer space we went to. We could take a little moment and find a little bit of peace in there, and you were not expected to read the Quran. I think multi-faith spaces is something that offers this kind of very specific purpose, but it's also open to everybody. It's very hard to get that right.
Yeah, and I think there's an amazing hope at the heart of this pod. Really, is that kind of that is that embracing the multicultural that we're really trying to get to here. And as you say, a multi-faith prayer room is a perfect expression of that. And obviously, religion runs very deep, but these very basic human needs run deep too. Just in the fact that they are so everyday. And such a must-have requirement. There's no optional aspect to bathrooms and this sort of public service design. The multi-faith prayer room is a perfect expression of that intent. And really what we're saying is, we need to be thinking sort of multiculturally at all levels, including bathrooms, not just prayer rooms. It is a lovely example of putting, religious differences aside and embracing tolerance and really trying to think of what works for everyone. Look, I think one of the key conclusions we're getting to here is that public toilets are a must. And I don't know if you've seen a show. I don't want to be overly Matt recommends, but there is an awesome show. Well, it's not awesome, but it's an amusing show for sure, on Netflix, called Train Wreck Poop Cruise.
Oh my God.
And this is a really vivid reminder of the requirement of toilets as a must. So basically, I mean, this is everyone's worst nightmare, which is there's a cruise ship called Carnival Triumph, and it has a bit of an issue. An engine room catches on fire and causes a loss of power, much like your loss of power. But of course, a loss of power in a building means your toilets still work, but a loss of power on a boat means your toilets no longer work. Your essential plumbing systems go down. So we had 4,000 passengers spending days defecating in bags, 5 days. And I mean, literally, there's staff then deployed to collect these bags on a like almost hourly basis. People leaving the bags in the corridors to be collected. So I've always been terrified of cruises. I don't like the idea of a big boat like that, and I've always seen them as kind of, I sort of imagine if you cut a cruise ship in half, a sort of cross section of it. It's almost like a human lasagna.
Oh, ew! Oh my God, Matt, that was unnecessarily graphic.
And
Oh,
actually, apparently, the way they cope with this is they were encouraged. They had to literally educate all the customers on the boat how to survive this crisis, and it literally became a kind of toilet lasagna where the sheets were, were toilet roll. And apparently, they were doing number ones in the shower, and that was the protocol.
how despite myself, I need to know more details. Like, how long did this thing last? Like, how?
5 days, 5 days,
Oh my
and I mean,
God.
and it literally people go semi-wild. You know, it's like a really interesting human experiment of when you take away the ability to relieve yourself, and you're in this very very public space, very compressed space. Yeah, people turn on each other. It's wild and it's horrific, and it makes you very grateful for the basic flush. By the way, also on the basic flush, during my research, one thing I found as well, you'll have noticed this too, that people who blog in the space of toilets love a pun. And there's so many like hilarious names. There's one I did you Throne Lab I quite liked. It's quite a good blog about bathrooms. But one thing I discovered is that Thomas Crapper, who everyone knows invented the
Wow.
toilet, did not invent the toilet. He invented the ball cock and the U-bend, which are the two key ingredients of the kind of modern flush toilet. But he did not invent the toilet, so that sort of flushed everything I knew about toilets right down the drain. I had to get that in.
So I was so disappointed about how I woke up today morning, and here we are talking about the U-bends. So, and
Life is just one big U-bend, baby.
I can't. That thought of the story about the cruise is just like sitting in my brain. We need to talk about something
It's
different,
it's
fast.
it's a weirdly tough watch. I mean, but it's quite compelling. But at the same time, it's just like, oh god, and it just gets worse and worse. Of course, you know, it's just another race at the bottom because it's just getting, you know, over the course of 5 days, people start off going, well, I just won't go. I'll be fine. I just won't go. And then it's like, oh god, you know, I have to go and I have to do that and I have to put it there and I have to what? So
So
yeah,
no, so it's the number one reason I have zero intention of going to space, because well, astronauts, you know.
I love the way that's your number one reason for not going to space.
It is. I mean, not that I'm. It's not that I'm afraid of space. I'm not afraid of being in the vacuum. I would actually really like that. The long distance is fine, but it's the fact that you just scoop your own poop. Modern plumbing has been the best thing that's ever happened to humans.
Thank you, Thomas Crapper.
Okay, so just within the space of this, something that I've been super obsessed about, and I think going forward we're gonna have to do something about it. It has just been inclusivity in public spaces. So, as you just mentioned, if you can't relieve yourself, it takes away a certain aspect of being, like the self esteem and self dignity of a human being, and just it brings you down to the level of Neanderthals, and it makes me wonder if I'm a woman. I don't have any other thing other than being a woman. And I couldn't go into public spaces in certain spaces. But what about people who have disabilities? What about people who do not have the ability to just access regular, like your regular washrooms? And an increasingly growing sector that I don't think we have catered to enough in public spaces are the elderly. This is an overly aging populace that with multiple different kind of needs, and some visible, some invisible diseases that they're battling with, and we still have public spaces built for the hustle. I don't think our infrastructure is ready or supportive enough or conducive enough for healthy aging. And just in that aspect, I think I wanted to bring up that the fact that Singapore has got some kind of a formula that's been working right. It was designed to be that way. They have these housing complexes that have community centers and built-in hospitals. The way they came about it is that they tried to imagine a hospital without beds, which is such a brilliant design exercise. How do you design a hospital without beds? And they ended up bringing together 7 different agencies to have like elderly
Government
daycare.
government agencies, you mean?
I think Singapore, since it's Singapore, it is mostly government,
Yeah.
and there are some policies obviously that help enforce and enable the creation of these things. But there's also community effort and deliberate effort in trying to help active aging and aging seniors live more comfortably. So whether that's designing for community spaces, their community spaces are built for social interaction. Dr. Lu. She's an urban planner up in British Columbia, trying to do the same for Canada. But she was part of these projects that brought together. The way she says it is that you have three layers to help public spaces be enable healthy aging. The first is the brick and mortar. You have to get the infrastructure right. The second is the social programming. So you have to have proper initiatives and efforts to get people to engage with the elderly, not just discard of them once they're retired, or get to them when they need your help. And the third is the intent. You have to have the social conscious effort coming in from humans to want to check on other people, to want to check on the elderly, to want to actually care about the person who is aged and may not have all of their faculties right. She shared this lovely story. I won't be able to do it justice. I'm going to try, but she talks about this father and son duo who, at the end of the son's workday, would share a beer together, which the father would go walk to the local liquor shop and get every day. So that was his routine. That was the space was built for him to be able to independently leave his home, walk across, and buy something, and then they shared the end of the day together with his son. And they've been doing that for a while now. And then one day, the son gets a call from the liquor shop saying, "Your father wasn't here. He did not come to collect the beer." Then the son rushed back home immediately and saw that the father had taken a fall. So that kind of concern for the liquor shop owner to have noted well enough that, okay, there's an elderly person who comes in almost every day. He buys the beer, he takes it back. It was there because the son went to the liquor shop once his father had dementia. So when he had dementia, his father wouldn't be drinking as much, but he would still go get the beer. So instead of taking away that habit from him, he went and requested the shop owner to say, "Hey, my father's gonna buy these beers, but we're not drinking it. Can I bring these back to you, and you can refund me the money?" Yeah, so it just I'm sorry to have botched the story. I will link the original talk where she talks about this and so many other things that are so important to society, for to designing for the elderly. But this is part of that. You have to have the physical infrastructure in place. You have to have the social programming in place, but you also have the heart to want to care, want to care about the people who might not be exactly sharp and completely engaged, and you have to get them there, especially if they want to.
Yeah, and they may not have a voice, and I guess that's the key thing is that somebody needs to voice their needs on their behalf. Many of these audiences, as people sort of drift into older age, they sort of almost become invisible. And sure enough, I completely forgot about this audience in the context of this conversation. And you're absolutely right. Accessible toilets are critical, and a form of disability, not to sound cruel, a form of disability is aging. You're not as able, you're less able, you are in some ways sort of disabled. And so it is a key audience, and it's very easy to overlook this one. And certainly in many parts of the world, it's an audience that has grown up through challenging times. They've battled their way into old age, and they are strong and they are determined. So they probably just push past these issues and make it work for them, just like they've made the world work for them over the last however many decades. But again, it's probably suboptimal. And again, they probably got some money and would be very happy to pay for services that were more personalized to their needs. And I know I keep pushing this commercial agenda, but I do think the ability to know that when I get there, I'm going to be comfortable through and through. Not just in the meal I have, and not just in the experience I have, but also in the more everyday needs that are adjacent to that. I think there's a huge opportunity there, but as you say, a huge audience. We know there's a massive trend in the world today around wellness, and you and I talk about wellness as comparatively younger people, me a little bit less so. But the flip side of wellness is longevity, longer life. Yes, hopefully we will all live longer and be well, but the reality of living longer is that we will also be unwell sort of longer, certainly less able longer. So this sort of disability consideration around older customers is critical, both today, but also will become even more of an issue over time. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
No, the part that you keep on mentioning commercialization initiatives, I think what we're missing is socialization initiatives. I
Yeah,
mean,
very true.
if you look at the public spaces that you've been to and the ones that you enjoy, how many of those are built for socialization? The only thing that I can think of are libraries, and even then you're asked to be quiet, or you're expected to be just kind of silent and reading a book. I think as a more progressively we are getting into this weirdly digitally connected but socially isolated sphere of living, which is unhealthy for sure. But I also think it's a disservice to all the green spaces that we already have. I mean, why can a public space can not also be conducive to social engagement? Why can't it also be a part of how the society comes together? I mean, that isn't that what a community center was or is?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. And as you mentioned there, you talked about digital versus physical. It's interesting because there's a terminology, there's a term used in digital design that you and I know well, human-centered design, that is very prevalent, and it's a huge concern around how screens and screen experiences are configured. And it does spill into physical product too, of course, but I don't think it spills into physical and sort of community space design in the same way. I think it's just not something that is considered as much. And as you say, why not think about human-centered design in the context of cultural spaces, of city spaces, of green spaces, and make those more a place of social connectivity and meeting broader social needs rather than just spaces of space.
I mean, when the institutions and the people responsible fail to do so, that's when human beings step in. I'm not sure what her organization is, but there's this woman in, the favelas in Rio,
Right,
in
yeah.
Brazil. So, um, it's built on top of each other, but they also have these little pockets of common spaces that could have just been left as overgrown. But this one woman took the initiative to teach the kids to harvest that land. She got them to plant seeds, trees, and so they grow their own fruits and veggies. That she then gets them to. She runs like a small non-profit education kind of a program for the kids to, like, even if they're not at school, for them to study and still have the option for a better life. And this is part of it. So she gets them to focus on cultivating the soil and prepping food, harvesting the stuff that they grow and then having it for lunch. So I think now it's a place that the community comes together and they use it, and because they've now built it together, they're working that much harder to maintain it.
I mean, perhaps what we're moving towards is a belief that people need to be more vocally involved, and if you can almost have these things sort of shaped by the customer themselves and by the community themselves, and allow those voices to really reflect the requirement of that space, of that product, of that experience, then you're much more likely to land something that is more sustainably relevant and sustainably used and sustainably satisfactory. Is that what we're getting to?
Absolutely, right? I mean, if you not to bring this to another facet of it, but if you look at the world's population right now, so many of us are migrants. We've left where we've grown and we're moving to other parts of the world, whether to explore different opportunities or just to explore a different facet of life. And if the place that you're in and that you're trying to call home is actively trying to show you that you're unwelcome here, you're less likely to build your life there. The best thing about Dubai is that it gives you, I mean, there used to be one Hindu temple and now there are like three, which, having grown up in the Middle East, I didn't have access to one. So I never had the option to imagine a future that I could build up because that was a huge part of my life. But Dubai makes it visible, and they make it clear that come here, we're sharing the space with you, and we want us to build the future together. So it's definitely that, you have to have the opportunity for the people who the spaces are being built for their voices and needs to be heard. And also it's co-designing. You get the people involved, and as soon as they know that it's built for them, they take that much greater care for it, and they're much more involved in seeing that it stays that way, and it goes into the future.
Who would have thought that religion and toilets were so closely intertwined? But we have just perfectly wrapped them around each other. It's amazing. But I think that's a lovely point and lovely, beautiful summary of where we've got to. So thank you. I think we've explored this world in full without getting too mucky.
Mhm.
Kept it pretty clean.
I mean, it was figuratively clean. There were some visual images that the listeners and me were subjected to that are not.
If you want those images, I point you to a train wreck poop cruise. You won't be disappointed.
Okay, in that case, we will link it for our listeners below. As usual, Matt, yes, it was a fascinating conversation. It was a long wait for it to happen. We had lots of other topics planned, and those are coming for
We
you
were
guys.
otherwise engaged.
But those are coming for you guys in the future. We will be back. We're trying to make this a regular thing going forward. So expect a new episode from us every Thursday. And let us know what you thought. If you have any favorite washrooms, if you have a washroom map of the world, that is something I'm interested in. I would pay for that
Ooh,
service.
yes.
Yes. Right?
Oh my gosh, what a spin-off. You're right, absolutely. Count me in. That's a subscription I need in my life.
Exactly. And on that note, signing off here. We will catch you in the next one.
Catch you there. Thank you for listening. Lovely to see you,
See
Olympia.
you.
Take care.
Bye.